Now, there are plenty of questions surrounding this leak still to be addressed. We want to bring in Colonel Mark Cancian, Senior Advisor with the Center for Strategic and International Studies, retired Marine Corps Colonel. Colonel, thank you for joining us. I want to get right into this. We saw from Pete Hegseth's detailed 12:15 F-18's launch, 1:45 trigger-based F-18 first strike window opens right there. Would you consider this classified information? And if it isn't classified, should it have been in a group chat on Signal?
It's clearly highly sensitive information that would normally be classified at the top secret level. Hegseth is playing something of a bureaucratic word game in that because this was on a application, there was no technical determination that it was classified. If it had come in as a document, then there would be top secret at the top. But of course, you don't have that on applications. Plus, as Secretary of Defense, he can declassify anything he wants. So it's highly sensitive, would normally be highly classified. But in this instance, the administration could argue that they didn't classify it or declassified it. The larger issue is Signal, as we've heard. It's not a secure application, and this kind of conversation should never have been occurring on it. In fact, there are regulations, directions not to do that. And the larger question is, how many other conversations have taken place that we don't know about?
Colonel, how are sensitive and classified conversations, I mean, other than the passing or the sending of actual documents, like you mentioned, how are those conversations typically held with leaders at this level?
Well, leaders will have a classified phone or communications device for very highly classified information. They all have special facilities, even in their homes, which they're called SCIFs for highly classified information, so that they can receive and disseminate, discuss classified information at home. And the Secretary of Defense has a group that travels with him that can also provide this service. It's a little awkward. I mean, it's much easier to do it on your personal phone, but there are mechanisms for doing this in a more careful way.
And Colonel, we were talking before we brought you on here about really just, we're finding out about all these leaked messages. It's not that someone got them secretly and then just released them to the world. But how do you think that this actually happened, that this reporter at The Atlantic was on the receiving end of these plans?
Well, this is a piece of information that has not come out, and I think will keep this story going. Waltz has put out the theory that Atlantic hacked his phone, which of course is ludicrous. My personal theory is that this was an autofill problem, that there was someone on the NSC who had a similar name. Waltz put the name in, but the wrong name filled, and then he didn't think anything more of it. But I think we'll find out, and then there'll be more to discuss. There's also the broader question about, why this journalist was on his phone in the first place.
Colonel, I want to ask this question. During your time with the Marines, you did tours in Vietnam, Desert Storm, Iraq twice. If somebody that you were serving with had shared this type of information in that manner, in a manner that they shouldn't have, what would have been the punishment for somebody that was actively serving?
Anyone less senior would be fired. There's no question that this, was an embarrassing, potentially extremely dangerous, and there would be severe disciplinary actions. And we've seen that in the past when these things have occurred. People have been disciplined for even inadvertent mistakes like this that were dangerous because of the classified material.
And obviously, with the days ahead, we will see if there is any type of punishment for whether it's Pete Hegseth or anyone else that may have been a part of that group chat. When you look at Jeffrey Goldberg, who's the editor-in-chief at The Atlantic, the one that was in this chat that wasn't supposed to be, they could have sat on this information and not released the details of the conversation to the masses, right? They could have gone back and forth with the administration saying, hey, why are you using Signal for this? That conversation still could have happened, but could they be at any fault at all? Because now the world knows exactly what was in those texts, because of the Atlantic. I'm not saying that none of this should have happened at the beginning, but they didn't have to release that to the public. Could they be held liable for anything? Because they're the ones actually releasing this to the world.
I'm sure the administration will try to take action against the Atlantic, but many administration officials have said this is not classified information. It's unclassified. And as Goldberg said in his article where we laid out all of the texts, if the government says it's unclassified, there's no reason why we can't publish it. It's an important element of the public debate. So I expect the administration to try something, but I think it's going to be very difficult to make something stick given the statements that they've made.
Well, Colonel, given where we are right now, we have people who are obviously concerned about this information being handled the way that it was. And then you have the Trump administration and top officials saying this isn't really that big of a deal because this was carried out successfully. We didn't have too many specifics in here. But where do we go from here in order to ensure that data like this and conversations like this continue to be held secret?
Well, the administration has already put out, DOD has put out guidance that you don't use these platforms, and clearly that needs to be reinforced. I understand that behind closed doors there have been some sharp conversations about classification and keeping these conversations confidential. So I certainly hope that the administration takes steps to make sure that these conversations take place in the proper channels with the proper safeguards.
Colonel, we got about 30 seconds left. I know you do some advising as well. Your advice to the Trump administration, how do you wrap this up? Because it seems to be something that continues to make headlines. How would they wrap this up? What would be your advice to them?
My advice would be what they should have done at the beginning, which is to say this was a mistake. We are going to make sure that it never happens again, and we're going to investigate, how this occurred, and leave it there and keep coming back to that. And then the story would fade away. But instead, they keep feeding it with narratives and explanations and evasions. And as a result, 4 days after the event, here we are.
Disclosure is always better than discovery. That's usually how it happens out there. Colonel Mark Cancian, thank you so much for your time, your insight into what everyone is discovering day by day. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Mm-hmm.